Hello friends, I'm back today with part 3. My sand underpainting has pretty much dried, and when you use the liquid it doesn't take but a couple of days to dry to the point where you can work on it. I think the last time we were together I was working on the sand, the wet sand up here, and today I'm going to set up for my sand dunes, and my sand dunes are roughly going to come out here, and then I'll have a smaller one here, and then several little small clumps of seagrass and sea oats in that area. Now what you want to do with your sand, especially if you have laid your groundwork for the sand, you want to take your bristle brush, and I'm going to wet it and then get all of the turp out of it. But I'm using a number 8 white bristle brush, and one thing I like about this is that I can do it on the edge, and it will give me plenty of scruffy images. So I'm going to begin over here where my major sea oats and sand dune will be. But I hope you can see what's happening here by using the side of my brush and doing what I call dry brushing. I'm going to be going all the way up to this line because this is the wet mud from where the tide has come in. And the tide on this particular day is going to be low tide, when the tide has just gone out about as far as it's going to go. And then our imaginary scene is going to be coming back in momentarily. Now you can put on as much sand as you like. The reason that I do it this way is that I want it to have that scruffy look. And one thing I'll mention, when I get over here, I want to have a path that comes from over about here and then up into the beach area, because I want to suggest some footprints where the sand has been disturbed. So for that reason, I'm leaving some spots. To make shadows. Now, if you've noticed, what's happening here is that I set aside my portion for my sand dune, and now I've just covered it up, but I know where it is. And when I come back to that area, I'm going to be highlighting that more. One thing I do want to be sure that I complete is everything that's going to be behind those sea oats, because once I get the sea oats in, I won't be able to change any of that. One thing I will caution you about is your brush strokes. You want them to be somewhat parallel. Even though I'm not covering this in a solid way at this point, I still want some continuity with my brush strokes. And in case I haven't mentioned this before, it's important as you go along that you paint the edges. These canvases are nice because they're called gallery wrap, which means the staples are on the back side and the canvas itself is wrapped all the way around. Therefore, you don't have to have a frame. So whether you plan to have a frame or not, I would go ahead and paint the edges. And you want to paint it as you paint the other area, simply because coming back to that color that you're working with may not be easy. And I will say that using this paint without any sort of medium is going to mean it'll take a while to dry, so keep that in mind. So if you're painting along with me, sort of understand that I won't be back with part 4 for a few days, waiting on this to dry. Now that's about all I'm going to do with that sand, but while I have your attention, I'm going to put in some markings for my sea oats. And I'm not quite sure if I want to use my small my small fan brush or my white bristle brush. So I'll make that decision. Oops. First, I want to mix up some dark green. And I'm going to do that with Payne's Gray and some yellow. I want this to remain fairly dark. I'm going to gray it down a tad with a touch of red. But I also realize I can go back and darken this, which I surely will. I'm going to be using this very small fan brush. It's the number 2, and Rainbow is the brand, but I've never heard of that, so probably not something you can go and buy. But I'm just laying some groundwork here. Bring these little grasses on out here. Then I'm going to have another little area comes up here and down here. Now, these are sand dunes that are in my head. Put some grassy areas over here. Now, if you've been with me on other videos, I remind you not to have too much regularity or repeat patterns. At this particular point, all I'm doing is creating some areas that when all of this dries, I can come back and highlight. Okay, now sea oats are going to come all the way over here. And I'm going to pull those up just because I don't want clumps under there. Don't want to do too much of that right here because I'm going to have a few stray grasses, but not the sea oats themselves. But that's one good reason to use this brush. And let me warn you about these fan brushes. The fan brushes make, let's see if I've got something here I can do this to show you. If you use the full weight, and this one's not quite as rounded, but if you do the exact same shape, larger brushes are going to give you that fan look so that everything has a kind of curve to it. And people who use fan brushes for trees, they're not very careful. They can end up with some very funny looking trees. But again, I'm doing what I'm doing here just to set the stage. But I don't want clumps at the bottom. Those kinds of shapes will come later, and there will be lots more information here. I can do this without reference because I've looked at so many sand dunes and sea oats and waves and such. Don't suppose I paid much attention when I was going to the beach as a child, but certainly as an adult painter, I've been doing that. Okay, I'm going to call this finished for the moment. I'm going to go away and let it dry, and I will be back. Thanks for watching.